What's going on, everyone? Today I got an exciting video actually coming from a request from one of my patrons, but also it's that time of day where I just wanted to do a tier list, and I know you all want to see a tier list. So we've got every single legendary in the game, which I believe comes out to 68 different legendaries, and we're going to be ranking them from S to D. Now, this is going to be pretty interesting because previously when we rate these legendaries, a lot of the times it's in the middle of the spoiler season or just at the end of it when we haven't really seen the new legendaries in play. But also, we get to compare it back to some classic, like, set 1 legendary level cards. Cards that are defining for some archetypes. Cards that literally make those decks function. Which I think set 1 does have a proportional amount of legendaries in the S tier, as we will see. But also, we get to see where everyone else matches up. So hopefully you all enjoy. A big thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. One of you for suggesting this video. I thought it was a great idea. And also, I have a TCG player link in the description down below. But let's dive into our first couple of cards in the Vigilance category. All right, now to start us off, we're going to be going with the Vigilance cards. Just a quick reminder for those of you that have not seen a tier list video. S tier is going to be the cards that are absolutely defining in a certain archetype, absolutely core or central to winning a game. These legendaries define the decks. A tier are going to be legendaries that do contribute a good amount, definitely ones that you're looking to pick up, ones that really make your deck smooth out or potentially just really nicely statted or a nice effect that you're looking for. B tier, these are the ones that are just solid, the ones that are kind of making up the steak and potatoes of your deck. C tier are going to be the very niche legendaries or ones that are just somewhat a little bit underpowered. And then D tier are what I would consider unplayable legendaries, cards that have really never seen a ton of play, or cards that just don't really function in the grand scheme of what you want to be doing in Star Wars Unlimited. So that said, we've got Nebula Ignition to start us off. Now, Nebula Ignition, kind of an interesting one. 9-cost event, defeat each unit without upgrades. Okay, kind of a powerful effect, right? You can make this one-sided with like a Ray, for example. So there is something going for you there, I suppose. This, to me, is a C tier legendary. It has a very niche circumstance, and in that niche circumstance you can do some really nice stuff, but outside of that, just not really doing a whole lot. It is expensive. It is more expensive than the other wrath we have, and also it doesn't actually kill everything oftentimes, which can be a big downside. Next up, we've got Avenger. Now, Avenger's a pretty good one. This one's a pretty tough one to rate. Again, I might change things as we go along, but I'm going to start off Avenger in... just take a quick look at other cards we have to go over. I think this might be an S tier. I think it might be an S tier. S tier for Avenger is where I'm going to keep it at. This is one of the defining cards in the more controlling mid-range archetypes. It's kind of awkward right now because, right now, as of recording this video, it's a Django meta, which means that a lot of cards that you might see on this list in terms of ranking are a little bit different or may have been a little bit different just because of Django himself. But some of these cards are defining for their archetypes like Avenger. It makes the control decks in Villainy actually have an amazing win con to continuously keep control of the board. When this thing comes down, it is the finisher. And you can oftentimes play a control deck like Bosk Blue with just 3 copies of Avenger and maybe a couple of copies of some other late game cards and absolutely crush. Now, even though that is the case, I think it's a low S tier and maybe even a high A tier. We'll see where we are when we add a few more legendaries onto the list, because even though that is the case, it is a late game card. And so there are some games where it is pretty bad because you don't want a 9-drop in your hand when you're getting absolutely ran through with Sabine. Next up, we've got Snoke. I think this is an A tier card as well. Somewhere around the high A tier. This is another finisher for those Villainy Vigilance control decks. But more importantly, this actually helps you just stabilize the game for the remainder of the game. It's similar to another card that we'll see in a couple of cards here in the Vigilance category. It kind of does like a pseudo wrath for your opponent's board, and it actually kills more things than you would be expecting. And then because of the permanent -2/-2 for each non-leader unit, you are just sitting there with a massive downgrade to your opponent's units, which is really, really nice. Ray, pretty interesting one. 5 resource, 4/7, synergizes with the Kylo leader and kind of wants non-heroism units, and you want to be attacking with it. This one's it's okay. I am debating as to whether or not I should go in high C tier or low B tier. I think right now I'm going to put it in high C tier. I actually have seen like 1 or 2 copies played specifically in like set 2 Han Blue from set 2 meta, but that was a really small card pool, so I don't know if it's really going to be competing now. It has the force tag, which is nice, and you do get a little bit of this value with healing and such, but there's just so many better units, I'd say, in the specific circumstances. Like Vigilance Heroism is looking to be a little bit more controlling or a little bit more mid-range, and this is like requiring you to attack, requiring you to have other units, and like that's just way too many things going on. Next up, we've got the Ghost, brand new from set 4. This one's quite interesting. I think I'm gonna have to put this one also in C tier. I know some people are gonna be upset about that one, but basically only useful if you have other Spectre units. Yes, you can upgrade it. Yes, it can turn into a 5/6 Sentinel if you upgrade it, which isn't too bad. And that's part of the reason why I was considering it putting into low B tier. And you know what? Just because of that, I think I will. 5/6 space unit is a good stat line, and it isn't super hard to get it upgraded. And as it is just upgraded, it will give itself Sentinel. If you happen to have other Spectre units on the board, you can pass those effects around. And I will say, in like the Hera deck, which isn't insane or anything like that, it is like a low B tier, not even, I would say like a mid to high C tier level deck. You are going to find yourself really wanting the Ghost in certain circumstances. Just give Sentinel everywhere, which is obnoxious to deal with. So I'll give a little bit of leeway to Ghost here. Next up, we've got Super Laser Blast. Guys, this is an immediate S tier card. This card in of itself really, really forces you to play around the Vigilance Villainy control decks. This is way more important than even the Avenger and Snoke. Another reason why I am kind of leaning towards putting Avenger in the high A tier. And you know what? Just because I have Super Laser Blast in the S tier, I think I'm going to do so. Super Laser Blast is what gives you that equalizing power in that mid transitioning into the late stage of the game. This curve of Super Laser Blast killing leaders, all the units on the board, and then into Avenger, which kills their unit and sticks around as a finisher, is absolutely perfect. Super Laser Blast is incredible. And it really makes certain archetypes possible alongside Avenger, right? These two cards work together in tandem and really do some nasty, nasty stuff to opponents. Now, I will say we haven't had a hard control deck in a little bit, with set 3 having Han 1 being a huge portion of the meta. Some control decks were a little bit harder to play. And, well, with this new one, it's just all Django all the time. And so, well, you could still play a control deck, which are pretty good against them, but you're going to suffer a little bit against some other matchups. So it depends on kind of what you're looking to do, but Super Laser Blast is a key card, and I think the power level of the card warrants it to be an S tier, despite the actual archetype suffering a little bit in the current state between late set 3 meta and, well, just the overall strength of Django going up against everything in the meta. Next up, we've got Mandalorian. This one I've never been a big fan of. I'm going to have to put this one in C tier, probably ahead of Nebula Mission, but below Rey. It's a 6 cost 5/6 Sentinel is basically what you can kind of look at it as a ground unit, which isn't horrible, but I would almost always rather have Obi-Wan Kenobi. The when played of, buffing up a 2 cost unit, healing it up, and giving shield tokens is interesting, right? Very, very decent. But you need to have a 2-cost unit. And in this archetype, in Vigilance Heroism, you're not really going to have a 2-cost unit that's going to live up until Mandalorian coming down in most scenarios. Even if you do get that effect, it's still not higher than like a mid B tier option. Even Obi-Wan isn't something that I'm like, oh my gosh, it's Obi-Wan, especially in nowadays card pool. So Mandalorian in the middle of C tier. Luke Skywalker, gonna be an S tier, probably even higher than Super Laser Blast, although this one is definitely a hard argument. I think it is a little bit higher. It is one of the few heroism cards that is absolutely devastating in those mid-rangey / controlling decks. Comes down, kills something, is a 6/7. If it doesn't get removed, it starts restoring and completely taking you out of the danger zone. It is a win con in of itself. It also works extremely well with some of the other combo pieces that people have, specifically like with Yoda, with You're My Only Hope. But there's also like now there are 2 of them decks that get into Luke, or even like Ewing Reinforcements that grab Luke from the top cards of their deck. Luke is just an amazing, amazing finisher, one of the best cards, and well, one of the reasons why a lot of the mid-range heroism decks still exist. You're playing Anakin, you're playing Rey, you're going to have Luke's in your deck for the most part, and it is going to be a key card you're going to be looking for in a lot of situations. Another card where if you look at it now, you're like, do I want to be playing Vigilance Heroism? Probably not because of Django, but you know, the control decks don't do too bad, but Heroism doesn't quite have the firepower that Villainy does in multiple slots of its deck to actually compete, where the control is good enough to actually make it a good matchup up against Jango Fett. Next up, we've got Hondo Anaka, another new one from set 4. This one's interesting. You get to go out and kind of steal some upgrades. It's a 3/5 shielded in double vigilance. I'm gonna have to put this guy in like C tier. I think it's like middle of the pack, maybe a little higher C tier. It's actually a powerful card. A 4 resource one that steals upgrades is actually pretty nice. Now, the problem is this card is a double vigilance card, and double vigilance isn't a deck that usually is playing a lot of options, or is rather, there's not a lot of options with double vigilance that are playing a bunch of cards or units that are curving out. Like double blue Gar Saxon is the deck that I would see this card in, probably as the only deck that I'd see this card in, but it is quite powerful, especially as a sideboard option. Next up, we've got General Grievous, and I think this guy is a perfect B tier contender. Nice little 4/4 for 3. It is just a good stat line. Really doesn't have anything else going for it. It's one of those meat and potato type cards where I just play this as a 4/4 for 3, and it's got a really good stat line. Obviously, the lightsaber stuff, kind of a meme. It's a Separatist card, which also could matter in some situations, but just a 3 resource 4/4 is really all you got to say about General Grievous. Vigilance, I think this card's an S tier card. This is another card that has made a lot of control decks completely viable. This is one of those cards that gives you game in several different matchups. One of the things that was really a consistent factor is like with set 2 and with set 3 when Bosk Blue was a big deal. And of course, Bosk Blue is still a very, very strong deck. Vigilance would give you the option alongside Restock to potentially play that long game and mill out your opponent. But Vigilance also just goes ahead and works super well with something like a Bosk because you're able to get those HPs lower, heal, and defeat something, which is really important. That heal is something that is a completely obnoxious thing to deal with. Overall, Vigilance is just amazing. And just to show you how powerful the card truly is, we see this card played for 6 resources. Almost no other card on this list is being played out of Aspect. That should give you just some semblance of how powerful this card truly is. When you are playing against this like double blue Gar Saxons or double blue Idens or whatever it is, and you see a 4-cost Vigilance, it is a nightmare to deal with. And I imagine as we get deeper and deeper into the card pool, more options will open up, and double blue could be another potential option if we get a leader that kind of matches that style. But just the fact that you're playing 6 or paying 6 resources for this, and it's still an extremely powerful card, should kind of let you know that, yeah, Vigilance is a good card. Next up, we've got Satine. This is going to be our first D tier card. I know some people really like this card, but honestly, this is just not something that you want to be doing in Star Wars Unlimited. When this card came out, I was really excited to try to play a mill deck, but no matter what I came up with, it was just way too meme. It was just too big of a meme. You just couldn't really get anything going with this. It just doesn't end the game quick enough. Even if you do mill out your opponent, if you are going with this high toughness strategy, you still have to wait a ton of turns for them to actually die to their own non-drawing of cards, which can also prevent you from winning the game in of itself. Satine, D tier card, don't play it. Next up, we've got Invasion of Christophsis. I think this is also a D tier card. I have tried playing this card. I don't know, maybe someone has really been like, oh my gosh, I don't know how you put that in D tier. I got some exploit deck that's really great at getting this out. Even if you are able to exploit 4, okay, it's a 7 resource event. Exploiting 4, okay? And the whole idea behind Exploit is that you're going to have to put a bunch of units down for you to go ahead and get Invasion of Christophsis online. And if you're playing a Vigilance deck and you're looking for something like this, you oftentimes are playing a more mid-rangey and control deck, which wouldn't you rather just go ahead and play like Super Laser Blast and just fully kind of index towards the more controlling style? Generally, that's what I find. The heroism decks don't really want to be doing Invasion of Christophsis because they don't have as many great ways to generate a ton of bodies. So to me, it's a D tier card. Kiadi Mundi, this one's been a pretty good one, especially with that previous set. Just to being a 5/7 force unit, I don't think it's anything super special. It's one of those cards similar to Grievous, where to me, it's just a good stat stick with good trait, right? You got the force trait, great. It's a 5/7, great. It's a 5 resource unit, great. And you're able to kind of curve with like Anakin, for example, into like force throw. And then this attacks as a 7/7 potentially with Anakin. This to me is like a low A tier. The coordinate trigger doesn't really happen all that often. If it does, nice little extra value, but really it's just a 5/7 force unit that I've found to be decently strong. Annihilator is the next one, and I think this is a solid like B tier, mid to low B tier. It is a card that people are playing, one of, two ofs. Honestly, I think that if you're really trying to kind of min-max your deck, if you're playing a control deck in this meta, Annihilator is not something you want to be playing main deck. I think it's totally reasonable to be playing sideboard, unless you're playing like Piet, where Annihilator actually is pretty good. It's part of the reason why it's in B tier. I think it's a little bit higher than the Ghost, actually. In Piet specifically, you do get to get this down. It is a removal option. But even then, I would still significantly prefer an Avenger because of how much earlier you can get Avenger down. 2 more resources is a lot. And Avenger is just an amazing win con in any control deck, where Annihilator can be specifically good in certain matchups. 11 resources is a ton, and usually it's unnecessary to really have Annihilators in your deck. And lastly, we have Second Chance. This one's going to go at the bottom of C tier. I think it's not quite D tier because I don't find it to be unplayable. I've had a few people try to make this work in Double Vigilance, kind of replaying some cool stuff. It is okay in those very, very, very niche scenarios. But again, I said okay and very, very niche. So barely any use. I think it's bottom of the C tier. I don't really think this card is very good. But hey, it's not quite D tier. It isn't actively like playing mill deck and just losing you the game or having like a 13 cost event in most situations, or even an 11 cost event when you could have been playing Super Laser Blast, etc. Second Chance in the C tier. And that brings us over to the Command Legendaries, starting us off with Scramble Fighters. This one I do not think is very good. I think it is honestly just a D tier card. Creating a bunch of TIE Fighter tokens and trying to whittle down your opponent's forces in the space arena for 7 resources is honestly just ridiculous. The best part about this is that you can go ahead and maybe pick off a few different small units, but again, it's sort of like a one-sided Wrath is the intended purpose, and you're able to go ahead and pick off your opponent's space units. So if they don't have space units, it doesn't really work as a Wrath. And then the second thing, it requires so many actions that it doesn't even necessarily really prevent you from taking damage. Like if you take initiative, you play Scramble Fighters, and then they can still attack because you're picking at them with 1 damage unit. It's just horrible. To me, this is a D tier card. Ayla, Sakura, very solid ECL option, but not something that really dominated at any point. It's a solid card and did have that ECL potential, and it wasn't too bad with set 2, or rather set 3 coming out. There was a few decks that tried to take advantage of it. Honestly, I even think it's more like maybe like a mid B tier over than General Grievous and Annihilator, because the decks that were really trying to use this were not that great of decks. But Ayla did do some okay work as a way to just have a 6/5 that just didn't take any damage on attack, which isn't too bad. Home One is next up. This is one of the better mid-range slash a little bit of value generating pieces. I do think this is like the quintessential mid-range card. Something that comes down, is a threat in of itself, helps you stabilize, as well as builds a big board because you have to play something from your discard pile. That is really strong. Honestly, Home One is one of those cards that really gives you some game against some of the control matchups later on in the game as a heroism deck. if you're playing Command Heroism, of course. This is one of those things where when I was playing set 1, I was playing my old Vader Blue, and my opponent was running in with her home ones. That was the card I was most afraid of. It is still a very solid legendary. It's just a matter of heroism not really getting there at the current moment. Executor is next up, and this one to me is a D tier. Oh, it pains me, guys. It pains me. It's a D tier. I have tried to see the light with Executor. You know what? I'm gonna put. I can't do it. I'm gonna put it in C tier. I love it's a fun card. Okay, it is a fun card, and I think that's what makes it really interesting. I actually do think it's better than Second Chance. I'm gonna put it in the C tier low version. The use case of this is like if you're fighting against a control deck, you play this, you get a bunch of TIE fighters, and no matter what they do, there's just a bunch of little pecking little nonsense things. That's the best thing I've seen with Executor playing like Piet. I don't think any other deck's playing it besides Piet. So very, very, very niche, specific deck with a specific matchup. But you know what? It's worth it. I'm going to put it in C tier for that reason. Next up, we've got Command. This one to me is an A tier legendary. Honestly, if it wasn't double Command and it was like a different combination of aspects, this could easily be a S tier legendary. The power level of Command is ridiculously high. Being able to not only ramp, but also be able to potentially draw you a card from your discard pile, kill off a unit with one of your units, or just pump up a unit and make it a massive threat is incredibly strong. Many of the decks that were playing double Command in literally win games just because we happen to draw Command or even multiple versions of Command in that deck. These double aspect early namesake cards of their aspects from set 1 are incredibly powerful and really are kind of the guideline for how powerful a legendary can be in my eyes. Although Command as the aspects are just a little bit weaker. Like the double Command portion of Command is what's holding it back. And it's not really something you want to be playing for 6 resources, unlike something like a Vigilance. Clone is the next one up, and this one to me it's pretty bad too. I think it's somewhere around the bottom of C tier. I've tried to use Clone myself. There's some cool things, where you can go ahead and duplicate some unique units, which is kind of interesting. But the problem with this is like, do I want to have this in my deck, or do I want to have like Maul or Vader or whatever else 7-drop that I can drop on their face, or even like Luke Skywalker? Well, I'd rather just have those cards. And you can't play that many 7-drops in your deck. And then if you don't happen to have a unit that you can copy, it's just a dead card. So extremely niche use, can be interesting. Honestly, you could argue that Clone, just because of the volatility of the card, should be in D tier. And you know what? I think that I'm just convincing myself of the D tier area, because Clone truly has the worst floor of any card I have seen, where like it is just dead. Like it doesn't do anything because your opponent's playing a bunch of weak units or whatever. I mean, it's not completely dead. Technically, a lot of these cards could be completely dead, like Invasion of Christophsis or even Super Laser Blast. But the ceiling isn't that great either. The ceiling is like copying your opponent's best unit or something like that, which is like, well, I guess it's decent, but is that card meant for your deck? No, I think it's a D tier card. Darth Vader. Boop. I think Darth Vader is an S tier legendary. It's been a little bit since we've seen Darth Vaders in the meta, with Piet running around with capital ships and some of the mid-range villainy decks really not doing a lot of work because they're a little bit weak to the Django decks. Even though they have some controlling elements, they still try to win the game with a lot of attacks, and the just Django nonsense is just really tough. Like, for example, Kira Green is really tough to be playing up against some of the matchups, and also some things like Krennic Green or the villainy Command decks that are really trying to see play. Still good in like Palpatine, for example. Still absolutely loving Darth Vader there. It is a menace. Coming down, being something that removes a unit and gets you potentially a Sentinel in the ground arena is exceptional. This is, and well, it was the most expensive card in the entire game for a decent amount of time. I think it's still one of the most expensive cards in the game. I haven't checked in a little bit in terms of Vader pricing, but You'll have to let me know in the comment section down below. Next up, we've got Devastator. This is a fantastic one. It is probably somewhere around the A tier for me. I think it's somewhere around like the middle part of A tier. Devastator is an amazing finisher, similar to Avenger in these more mid-rangey late game decks, especially in like Palpatine, where Palpatine's one of the better leaders in the game. Devastator fits perfectly within Palpatine. Usually you're playing 1 to 2 copies of it, and just coming it down, hitting something for 9, 10, 11 damage, whatever it is, and then being this massive sentinel body in space that's really tough to deal with. That's really nice. Something that comes down and does something immediately is what you really want with these late game cards, and Devastator does exactly that. It kills the most powerful unit on the board and then sits around as a massive brick wall for the space arena. Next up, we got Turbo Laser Salvo. This one's been an interesting one. I think it's actually a pretty powerful card. I'm going to put it at the higher end of B tier. It has a lot of potential, but only specific decks can really take advantage of it, and I'm looking at you, Piet. Just playing a bunch of big capital ships, not only because they got big stat line to take advantage of Turbo Laser Salvo, which you need, but also just because you want, or you rather need, a space unit for this to work. And a lot of your other space units can go ahead and just die off if you don't happen to have those big space units you can be playing back to back to back with something like a Piet. Next up, we've got the Starhawk. Oh boy, I know some people have been pretty excited about this one. I'm going to put this one at the middle high end of C tier. I haven't really seen any usage of the Starhawk, and this might just be because, again, we're in a Django meta, but there are some cool things you can do with it, such as if you're playing like the Yoda deck and you're my only hope, and get this down early, get a discount on it, and then start leveraging this into like a late game powerhouse where you're just dropping Zillow beasts and things like that for 5 resources or whatever. Starhawk does have ambush on it, which isn't too bad, but honestly, it's a 9-drop that just ambushes a space unit and then helps you in the next few turns. It doesn't actually stabilize you completely. Like 6 power ambusher in space is honestly just not enough on the 9 resource category. So unless you're able to like hyper ramp and then use this to leverage into a bunch of massive cards, I don't really see it. And also just having this out later on in the game, you're going to need a lot of expensive cards to actually take advantage of the ability of paying half for some of your stuff, but that really messes with your deck makeup. So not really all that impressed. Next up, we've got Gore. This one is a 12 resource exploit, sentinel, ambush, overwhelm 7/7. This guy to me is definitely in the C tier category. I mean, it's somewhere around here. I'm going to put it above Nebula Ignition because I have seen a few decks with it. The exploit, bringing it down, you get to do some damage directly to your opponent's base, get a sentinel. I mean, that's not too bad, but the problem is that exploit portion of it hasn't really came into fruition. It's just a little bit too expensive because if you're exploiting a bunch of cards, you're kind of trading those potential further turns damages for immediate power in Gore, and Gore just isn't enough to actually finish out the game in of himself. Next up is Finalizer Guy. It's a D tier. I mean, it's a D tier. There's not really much else to say. It's like Executor, but like no advantage to it. It's lower stat line. It has the when played to capture things, but like you only get to stabilize the board if you happen to have other units on the board, and then if they kill those units, it comes back to them. To me, this is just way too expensive, similar to what Executor is dealing with for a big stat stick that doesn't actually stabilize you in a bad position. It's more of like a win more card, and you don't need that as an 11 drop. Like you have Executor if you want to win more, or you have Devastator, or you have a million other cards that I'd rather play in those scenarios that are way better in most other scenarios too. Next up, we've got Unity of Purpose, and just for my good old friend Rex, we're going to be keeping this card in the B tier. I think it's like a low to mid B tier card. It's one of those cards that needs to have a specific deck. Like when you're building a Unity of Purpose deck, you are building a Unity of Purpose deck. If you're putting the card in your deck, you want to be drawing it every single game, and you are going to do some amazing things. The card doesn't always win you the game in other situations because you need a bunch of units, but if you're building a deck like Rex with the droid manufactory, and you've got 4 units just on your deploy of your leader alone, any other unit makes this card an insta win basically the next turn, giving yourself +3/+3. So you have a 4/4, another 4/4, a 5/5, totaling in 14, or rather 13 damage just in those, plus Rex, which is another 7 damage, or rather another 5 damage, putting it up to 18 damage. That can just win the game outright. So Unity of Purpose, really just an amazing finisher in the decks that are really good for it. It's so powerful that I'm going to put it at the low end of B tier, but I think you could argue that it's like a high C tier card. Next up, we got Pyrrhic Assault. Guys, I just don't see this card ever, and I don't think it's very good at all. I think Satine is like arguably one of the worst cards in the game. But Pyrrhic Assault, yes, it's interesting. Yes, you could do some things where you like trade off a bunch of your units. Problem is it's double commands, so you're oftentimes going to play 5, because the decks that are playing Pyrrhic Assault are going to be wanting to play Unity of Purpose usually, just because of how powerful that card is. So you want to be indexing towards that. So you don't want your units to be dying. And then if your units are dying, is the 2 damage actually worthwhile to invest a card into? Usually not. So I'm going to put that in D tier. We got a couple bad ones, actually. We got Rule with Respect as well. I think this one is also a D tier option. I've done some pretty cool things with Rule of Respect, so I'm going to put it a little bit higher in the D tier category. I think if you wanted to mix any slot of where these D tier cards are placed, I wouldn't complain at all. But I have done a couple of cool things where you are in like that insane win more scenario. Your opponent's like trying to catch up, and then you've captured all their units. Great. Yeah, that's like about it. The problem with this card is like the whole idea behind it is you have to have a unit down, and then your opponent has to be dominating you with a bunch of attacks. Like, yes, you can capture 1 or 2 units, but if you're capturing 1 unit, you'd rather just use a different card that captures straight up 1 unit. If you're capturing 2 units, okay, it's not horrible, but you did pay extra to capture 2 units that had to have attacked you already, which means they already have a big board if you're using 4 resources on this. And then it's all on 1 unit. So if they just bounce that unit, the Rule of Respect is completely worthless. Or like if they just kill that unit, they get all their units back. It is pretty bad, but it can do some cool things. Endless Legions. This one is a... There's some combo potential with this card, okay? There's some combo potential with the card. It's a C tier card. All right, I'm joking a little bit here, okay, with some of these D tier and C tier legendaries, because I do believe that a lot of them are just basically unplayable when you get to this stage. But I have seen some really sweet stuff with Endless Legions. It's obviously one of the most powerful cards in the entire game. It is just ridiculously expensive, and it's in double command. I think if one of those things was not the case, you could see some more options with Endless Legion, but just being able to play it for essentially free, like I've seen it in Yoda combo decks, where like you get down to really low HP, and then you have a bunch of nasty stuff in your resource pile, like maybe even a home one, and maybe a Devastator or event. Like I've even seen that where you just drop Endless Legions and you get all those units out, you heal up, and you go back into the winning position. So maybe in the future we could actually see just a turbo ramp deck taking advantage of that. I don't think so, but maybe we'll see a combo deck use it. I don't know. It's a fun card. It's really powerful as well. And lastly, we have Darksaber. I think this one is worthy of like a low A tier just because of Sabine. It's really hard to see Darksabers now, especially with all the upgrade hate, which you know what? I think I am reconsidering. I'm going to put it in the B tier. With all more of the upgrade hate in the meta right now, I think this is lower. It's just like the new card pool is set for really made Darksaber a hard choice to go with. Also, it is specifically a card that kind of worked with Sabine, but you weren't playing a full playset. It's a specific scenario card where you drop it, you get a bunch of damage in. Every other deck that was really playing it is kind of going with a Mandalorian strategy, which it did really well in there, but it's not really making that deck like a super powerful deck. It just kind of makes that deck almost function and take you by surprise in some of those situations. It is a powerful card, and that's why I think it could be argued for A tier. But I think with just all the upgrade hate now, I'm gonna have to put it in like high B tier. So Dark Saber, sorry, buddy. Moving on with a force to the aggression side of things, we've got Black One. Guys, I think this card is pretty bad. I've seen it do some things, so I actually think it's the best of the D tier options. And like, you could argue that like, okay, if Black One's in the top of D tier, shouldn't Endless Legion, Second Chance, Executor, and that type of stuff should be a D tier as well? But you know what? The power level of those cards can actually be a lot higher than Black One. Black One's, you know, when played and when defeated, like, it is a 6 resource 4/4. It is a 6 resource 4/4 in space. It is horrible stat line. The idea is that you get to refill your hand and maybe finish out the game. In reality, it doesn't actually give you the option to finish out the game, and you'd rather just be playing more cheap events that you could have played early game and then rely on like a few cards in the late game to actually get you there. So Black One, gonna be a D tier card. Next up, we've got Devastator. Now this one's very interesting because in set 4, obviously Devastator is good, and you could play it for 8 resources, and it's still a solid card. The question I have in my brain is like, how would I rate something like Emperor Palpatine from set 1, the 8 resource 6/6 that dealt 6 to ground to any units? I actually think that effect as just an 8 resource unit is pretty on par with Devastator, and so I would probably put Emperor Palpatine like the A tier. And I think the really strong part about the Devastator is the fact that you get to play it with Triple Dark Raid. I think that's what's making Devastator so powerful, specifically in like Jango's, Boba Fett's, and that type of stuff. So in of itself, do I put it in A tier? The reason why I think it's a tricky decision is because cards like Darth Vader or cards like Home One also rely on other units to see their full potential. So is Devastator an S tier because of Triple Dark Raid? Is just existing in the game and you can play it for 6 resources? I think that's the argument I am making. And for that reason, I'm actually going to put it in the S tier. I think it's a low S tier. It does finish out games, but it's not always necessary. But it is a card that has completely warped the mid to late game options for some of those Triple Dark Raid decks. Like, previously, yes, Triple Dark Raid was a scary thought for even the controlling decks or even the decks that got to the mid game. But now they get to pull out a Devastator versus a Ruthless Raider. And that is frightening because you get the same damage to the base that a Ruthless Raider would have with the win played, assuming they're going to kill the Ruthless Raider. But then you also have a 9 powered attacker. And also, it's just a better card on 8 resources, right? You can just play it for 8 resources. So to me, because of Triple Dark Raid, I think it's actually just an S tier card. Next up, we've got Shadowcaster. This one, to me, is a D tier option. I would just never, ever play this card. Ever. It's able to go ahead and double up when defeated triggers as a 4/7 for 6 resources. It's just way too expensive to try to get value from previous units. Like, you're going all in on the 6 resource unit, and you better hope that you got a bunch of when defeateds out. I'm tempted just because of how terrible some of these cards are to put it in C tier, because I could see the power, you know. And you could honestly say that about a lot of these cards. Like, oh my gosh, rule with respect. Like, you drop it, and hold on, let me fix that camera. Whoop, there we go. You drop Rule with Respect, and you capture like 6 units, and oh my gosh, you won the game. Like, yes, there are some cool things. Like, that's the strength of Legendaries. They are powerful cards. But just in reality, these cards just don't do anything. And I think Shadowcaster's in that tier. Next up, we've got Profundity. This one's an interesting one. I think this is really a symptom of those styles of decks, which is like Anakin Blue, Rey Red, are really susceptible to just completely falling on their face because of Jango, right? When you're relying on like Yoda attacks or Kanan attacks or whatever, units to stay on the board instead of getting bounced or killed off by Tarkin Town, you are going to struggle trying to play a mid-range / more late game focused heroism deck. And that's where Profundity shines. That said, I think the card in itself is like a mid to low B tier. The card does do some really nice stuff. It really works well, especially against those controlling options. You get it in, able to go ahead and make your opponent discard a ton of cards potentially. And that isn't too bad. It's also a rebel, which is also kind of interesting. Next up, we've got Kylo's TIE Silencer. This one's probably the memeiest of them all. This one's just straight up an A tier. It is just an A tier. It is a 2-resource 3/2 is how you should look at this card. 2-resource 3/2 is good enough for the A tier. Why? Because it's a space unit. That's it. It's a space unit. It works well with a lot of specific decks. It's a 3/2 for 2 resources. The power of just being a cheap play really, really shows its face here with Kylo's TIE Silencer. The amount of play, if you compare it to like a lot of other cards here in the A tier, Silencer is probably up there as one of the more played options just because it's so cheap and it fills in so many curves of so many decks. And you might say, oh, okay, well, maybe that would be a B tier because it's more like a meat and potatoes card. But there's a severe lack of like those 2-resource aggressive space units. So this is actually a more premium option, similar to like Kiadi. So I'm going to put it in A tier. Next up, we got Force Lightning. Definitely an interesting one. Definitely one that's very, very niche. I'm going to have to put it in C tier. It's a really strong card, and I did actually use this a lot back in set 1 and a little bit in set 2, dealing with like K2SOs or something like that to get rid of their abilities and finish them off. The problem is you do need a Force unit, and that can be a little bit tricky. I think Force Lightning is one of those cards where, my goodness, are we going to see it improve for set 5? I definitely think Force Lightning could be an option that you're like, oh my gosh, maybe I want to pick up Force Lightning now because of the set 4 cards. I could definitely see that. Next up, we've got Mace Windu. This one's always been an interesting one because I always want to put this guy in my deck, and I'm in some matchups, it's like, okay, kill some ambush, kill something, ambush, kill something, you know, ready it up, kill something, ready it up, hit the base, and it's insane. And then in like 80% of games, it's just sitting in my hand. I have a 7-resource 5/7 ambusher that's just gonna die to whatever I ambush. So I think this is more of like a C tier card. I think it's like a pretty good C tier card, but it's one of those cards that is kind of like a specific scenario where you're going to want Mace Windu. I can definitely see this card being pretty good in like an Anakin deck, which is what I was running back in set 3, where you drop the Mace Windu down, you get an attack in, it readies up. Maybe you finish off something small, but then you can use Anakin's ability to kill off something bigger. And then you killed off 2 units with just Mace Windu. Of course, if you're able to put something like a Jedi lightsaber on Mace Windu, that's where it gets really strong. That's why I say like Anakin with the Vigilance combination, but overall kind of mediocre. Resolute is the next one. This one's also, I think, a deeper C tier card. It's not terrible. It does have some use, but overall, the fact that its base cost is so high makes it really tough to actually utilize the discount. Yes, you get the discount, and yes, if you have 20 damage in your base, you can play it for 6 resources. But the problem with that is that you're really in a bad spot, and Resolute's probably not the card you're going to be wanting to play because it doesn't actually like prevent someone from attacking or usually do enough damage to kill something off so you don't take more damage. And that's the problem with Resolute. If this was like maybe like a 9 cost space unit and you could play it for 5 with 20 damage on your base, and then maybe if it had like, instead of 2 damage, like a little bit higher or like a sentinel aspect, like something to prevent you from like really just dying still, I would say that's going to be what it's really missing. Next up, we got Kylo Ren. This one to me is an A tier legendary or a B tier legendary. This is one of those cards where I do find it to be quite strong. It's one of those cards where when you ECL it out, it has a really high potential to kill something and just pump in a ton of damage. It does have the force tag. It just wasn't widely played. It kind of reminds me of like a better Ayla Sakura. It's another ECL option. That's really the decks that I would be playing it in, is when I have ECL. So it's a little bit more niche, but it is a very nice statted unit at 6 resources, 6/7. It is a force unit, which can be relevant for some other situations. And overall, you can get a lot of value. And it does ambush as an 8-powered unit, which is pretty uncommon. Next up, we've got Aggression, and ooh boy, is Aggression a strong one. I am having a little bit of trouble here, whether I want to put this in S tier or if I want to put it in A tier. I feel like this is a card similar to Command. The double aspect part of aggression is what's holding it back, right? Double aggression's really tough to play right now, especially since you're so reliant on units and getting in damage. And then you see Django Fed, you're like, ooh. So I don't know if it's just Django, but like aggression was one of those cards where I'm like, oh boy, set 4 is really going to push this guy up. The problem is that the decks that we're going to play aggression are so bad against the decks that are really good right now. I'm going to put this in S tier just because of the power level of this card. I think it's a low S tier, but the ability to defeat multiple upgrades potentially, the ability to use this as an open fire almost, or ready up units for more damage is incredibly strong. And it's an S tier for me. Next up, we've got probably one of the best cards in the entire game in Poe Dameron as an ECL option. Not as a card itself, but as an ECL option. I literally don't see many other cards coming close to this guy. Like Wrecker as a 6-drop is something that can be better than Poe in some cases, but I think on average, I'd rather have Poe Dameron. This guy is exceptional. But what's interesting about it is we don't really see this guy out of like Han 2 that can cheat costs on it, or Sabine that has ECL, or really any deck that has ECL. I mean, you could play it in Anakin and Rey, and people do just because of the power level of the card. But the ECL is what truly makes it like a ridiculous threat. I think it still deserves an S tier spot because of the power level. And again, decks like Rey and Anakin are still playing Poe, but it does fall prey, especially in those decks, to the Django, right? It just gets exhaust permanently, which is really unfortunate. But if you're able to ECL it out, it can do some major work or get a single attack off. It is almost game losing for your opponent. Next up, we've got Crate Dragon. This is another one which I think is exceptionally powerful, but it's more of a late game / mid-range card. That's the deck archetypes that are playing it. I think that it's worthy of like a similar spot to the A tier here, because what's interesting about it is it doesn't actually stabilize the board for you. And the reason why I'm not going to put it, and I think it's actually behind Avenger, the reason why I'm not going to put it in S tier is because there's a lot of space decks right now, and a lot of people don't realize this, but Crate Dragon can only hit ground units or bases. And so if your opponent's in the space arena, you play a Crate Dragon, that's not actually stabilizing you at all. That's what kind of makes a card really push into the S tier when it comes to these late game options. Things like Vader, Luke, Devastator, Avenger all come down and help control the board. All of them. Crate Dragon just prevents your opponent from doing things in the future. And while that can be good and absolutely end the game, it doesn't do enough to bring you back from behind in some cases. In other cases, when you have some life to play with on your base, it's a 10-10 and your opponent can't play anything else, so you can race them, but depends on the situation. Next up, we've got Darth Vader. This one's a fun one. I'm going to put it similar to the area for Darksaber. I think it's a little bit stronger than what I've seen from Darksaber, especially in this new meta, but it's very similar in that if you get it down early, you put it on a unit, they don't have upgrade hate or a way to bounce your unit or whatever, and this thing goes to town and you just win the game on the spot. If you get a couple of attacks in, kill a unit or ping a couple of units and just do your thing, it is really nasty to deal with. If your opponent doesn't have waylays or exhausts or a way to kill your thing, which it sounds like, okay, there's a lot of things that deal with it, and that's true. That's why it's in B tier. But if they don't, it wins the game. It comes down on 3 resources, which is really early. So a lot of people aren't prepared for that, and it can just close out a game on its own. Next up, we've got Planetary Invasion. This one, to me, is absolute D tier. I have seen 2 people play this card against me in my time playing Star Wars Unlimited. And both times, I would rather them just play something completely different to win the game. And it's a card that they would have played in their deck. So while Planetary Invasion can be pretty cool, where you exploit something and you get to go ahead and ready up a bunch of units and get in some damage and everything like that, the problem with these cards, A, is you need to have a bunch of units for this to actually work. So you need to have a bunch of units, but then you also need so many units to where you can exploit some of them to make this cheaper because it's a 12 cost event. But then at the same time, right, you can only go ahead and use this if your opponent just doesn't interact with your units at all. To me, D tier. Next up, we've got Planetary Bombardment. This one's been pretty fun. I think it's actually like a middle of the pack B tier card in terms of the global legendary scale. Planetary Bombardment is definitely a decent option as a late game kind of burn option in some decks. And of course, if you are playing capital ships and more specifically Devastators, then it can be disgusting, right? 6 resources, 12 damage to a base is insane. And that can just sometimes be the case with a capital ship. But here's the problem. You need a capital ship first. So unless you're playing Piet, which again, Piet Red is one of the lesser appealing options of Piet, then you aren't going to get a capital ship down early enough to where that capital ship is not already winning you the game. And even if it's not winning you the game, is Planetary Bombardment really going to shift that scale in your favor? I would say in some cases, yes. In other cases, no, which is why it's in the middle of B tier. Next up, we've got Darth Maul. This one's an interesting one. I think this is somewhere around like low A tier. This one's a really nice ECL target as well to help you stabilize. It's an early enough game unit similar to Kiadi to trigger any force synergies that you might have. It is a 5/6, which is a little bit weaker than Kiadi, but you do get the fact of being able to attack multiple units, which can come in handy in some scenarios. So it's like a low A tier option. And then lastly, we have Unlimited Power. I've tried playing with this card a lot. I think this is one of those cards where it has a lot of potential, but in reality ends up being like a C tier option. I'm gonna have to put it somewhere around here. I don't know. I actually think it's a little bit worse just because of the double aggression portion of it. Like the fact that you have to play double aggression to get this for 6 resources means that it's so much more limited than just aggression on its own. So it's going to be probably like a mid to low C tier card. The moment we have all been waiting for, we now have the Cunning cards to deal with. Starting us off with Dryden Voss, probably one of the lesser exciting legendaries from Cunning. It has an extremely powerful ability, but it's going to end up in like the middle pack of C tier. I could definitely find myself running 1 or 2 of these in specific decks. Most recently, the Cad Bane Blue deck, where you have a lot of capture in it, but Jabba the Hutt as the biggest contender. It has a really powerful ability where you're able to essentially not only permanently remove opponent's unit from your capture zone so they can't get it back, but also play it for yourself. And you get a 5/7 shielded, which is really, really strong. So you kind of get like a clone type effect, but then you also get the 5/7 shielded portion of it, which is really, really nice. And you also get the ability to permanently remove a unit, but it needs setup, and it needs a good amount of setup, which makes it a lot weaker. Next up, we've got Final Showdown. Guys, this is a D tier card. I mean, I don't know. This one's pretty bad as well. It's in the bottom of the barrel of legendaries here. I have tried so hard to get this thing to work. This is one of those cards where, like, in theory, it could do some cool stuff. In reality, we're playing Star Wars Unlimited, and like this back and forth action allows your opponent to respond so nicely in a lot of situations where Final Showdown just does not work. It just does not work at all. And that makes it so much weaker. I have not seen this card win me a game in an otherwise situation where if I were to play the card I was going to put in the deck versus this card, that card would have performed better. Yeah, Final Showdown, a D tier option. Evacuate. This one's a little bit better. I'm actually going to put this one somewhere in the bottom part of B tier. I think this is one of those cards where the portion of Cunning is that you don't want to be doing this type of effect where you want to be putting a pressure on your opponent. And so bouncing everyone's units puts you back more so than your opponent. The decks that are really utilizing this are like Thrawn from set 1 and like Palpatine Yellow potentially, which is pretty powerful. Like the effect is extremely powerful, but the aspect doesn't fit the theme of the deck for Evacuate. Next up, we've got DJ. Guys, I'm going to use the same kind of logic to remain consistent that I did with Devastator. DJ, end of himself, 7 to smuggle, comes out, steals a resource. Not that game breaking. With tech, he is a lot better. Now, is he as strong as Devastator? I don't think so. I think tech and DJ are a very powerful combination. And I think part of the reason why DJ is so strong is because of all of the threat related to DJ versus what actually happens in game. And not only that, but also requires Han Solo as a leader and potentially Tech to really utilize DJ. Because if you don't have Han, they just get the resource back, which is a lot weaker. But in the Han deck, he is obviously a critical component. So I'm actually going to put it in A tier. And again, similar logic as Devastator. But the thing is, you need more setup for DJ than you do with Devastator. Because you need to have tech, and you need to draw DJ. Like, you need to have both of them in order to pull that combo off. Or you need to be playing Han and you're paying him for 7 resources, which is a lot weaker than I think with the Tech DJ combo. Whereas Devastator, as I was saying earlier, just Triple Dark Raid. That's all you need. And you just grab that Devastator and you're able to go to town. So Devastator, I think a little bit stronger in terms of power level than DJ. Next up, we've got Cad Bane. This has been a pretty big mainstay. I think this is like an A tier legendary. Cad Bane really gives you a lot of game in a lot of different matchups. I think that I'm maybe putting this a little bit too high because I do think Snoke's a little bit stronger. So maybe I should kind of reorganize these 3 just based on what I'm seeing here. I think Cad Bane is just a little bit weaker than Snoke. Snoke is super, super strong in those late game scenarios, but Cad Bane does some major work in terms of just stabilizing the board real quick because you can capture multiple units and it's just HP equaling 8. So if you do shrink some stuff down, you can actually grab more things than you otherwise would have. And Cad Bane does some amazing stuff to really stabilize the board, even if it's temporarily, just to get yourself, get your feet underneath you. Next up, we've got Ahsoka Tano. This one I think is pretty interesting. I'm actually going to put it in the group of Force units. I actually don't think it's as strong as Ki-Adi-Mundi, but I think it's somewhere around like the low end of A tier, somewhere near Darth Maul. It is an early Force unit. I think this is one of those cards with set 5 that is going to get a lot better. An early Force unit that's going to give you the ability to potentially replay Force units and maybe trigger the ambush over and over again. Qui-Gon Jinn might be pretty good. I don't know, might be pretty good. I might get some value out of that, but also just Force units in general from set 5 is something that you're looking for. But as of right now, yes, you get some minor synergies with Force Throw. Yes, you get some minor synergies with like the Forces with me, but it is a 3/4 usually. It does have the Force tag, which is what you're trying to leverage. And if you're able to leverage it, it is quite strong. If you're not, it's, well, kind of mediocre to bad, to be honest. So maybe it's actually weaker. You know what? I'm actually going to put it in the middle of B tier. I convinced myself out of the Force category because I do think these ones, like Ki-Adi is an above average stat line. Darth Maul has a pretty good stat line and has a unique ability. Ahsoka, it's a 3/4 for 3. And it has sometimes relevant ability, but most of the times not. And it has the Force tag. So I think it's more of like a little bit weaker than Grievous type level. Next up, we've got Chancellor Palpatine, a nice little double cunning option. This to me is somewhere around the high level of C tier. It's a double cunning card, which isn't too crazy to go ahead and play because double cunning is probably the best double aspect combination. But the problem is that there's so many good double cunning cards like Cunning, Bodhi, Cantina Bouncer that Chancellor Palpatine just doesn't have really any place. And I think that's what makes Chancellor Palpatine a little bit tricky. We obviously played it in like Akbar, which was really fun. And if you do get the on attack trigger, it can be really obnoxious where you played a 4 resource 2/6 that generated a 2/6 and a 2/2, and that 2/2 got to attack as soon as Palpatine got to attack. That's kind of annoying. Next up, we got Now There Are Two of Them. This to me is an S tier legendary still. I'm going to put this, I think, on the lower end of S tier. I think Aggression's actually better than Now There Are Two of Them at this point. Now There Are Two of Them did get a few different plays, and it's still quite good. I think the biggest thing with Now There Are Two of Them, it's still just kind of being dwarfed by Triple Dark Raid, because Triple Dark Raid kind of has a similar idea as Now There Are Two of Them, where you get to cheat on the cost. But Triple Dark Raid gets an immediately readied up unit, gets to crush out the game quicker. But Now There Are Two of Them can create such unbalanced games. Like turn 2 getting like a Plo Koon down onto your opponent is so disgusting. And that's what Now There Are Two of Them causes. It is a really good card. It is another one that I think with set 5, with all the Force cards coming out, oh my gosh, like It is going to be so annoying, I think. Next up, we've got Invincible. This one's been kind of an interesting one. I think I'm going to put it like middle of the road B tier. Invincible is a card that you really don't get the secondary effect all that much. Deploying a leader and getting to bounce something, as I found when I'm playing like Count Dooku or like not Wat Tambor, Count Dooku, or heck, even I play this in Piet because it's a capital ship. You're really not getting all that much value from that side. It's really just a really cheap unit to be playing. It's a 5 resource 6/6 space unit in Separatist decks, which is kind of nice. So that is something to utilize if you happen to be playing that Separatist deck. So I think that's pretty nice. I think it is just a big stat stick. And there are some situations where you can deploy a leader. I should say Piet is one of those leaders that actually is able to trigger the Invincible's ability, where you get to play this for 5 resources, then deploy Piet and then bounce something. So that's not too bad. But in Separatist decks like Dooku, I found it to just be a big space unit. And then the other Separatist decks are just a lot weaker, like Wat Tambor. Next up, we've got Han Solo. This one's a pretty interesting one. And one of the pilots here. Is this the only pilot on our list? Oh, no, we have the Darth Vader here. Is there another pilot? No other pilot. Okay. Han Solo and Darth Vader as the legendary pilots. I think that's pretty fitting. This card to me has been an A tier option. Not a like incredibly powerful A tier, but an A tier nonetheless. This is one of those nice value pieces. When I say incredibly powerful, I don't mean it's like game winning on its own, but it's just a really, really good thing to be doing. Getting an immediate attack in with permanent stat boosts and the upside of having your Millennium Falcons just do that first striking nonsense is really strong, and it's pretty cheap. And then the fail case of being a 4/5 ambusher is not irrelevant. I have used that many, many times with the Han Solo, so definitely for me an A tier option. Home one, this to me is C tier, maybe B tier. Okay, I'm going to put it in C tier because I think it's so niche that you don't want to be doing it. One of the things with Home 1 is that it really needs those space units to be playable at all. A 9 resource 7/8 ambusher is not good. We talked about Starhawk earlier. It's a 6/9 ambusher for 9. That's not good enough. You need to be getting the discount on Home 1, and the discount is incredibly hard to get against most normal decks. You need to be playing They Hate That Ship. So you need 2 cards in your hand to make this work. And then even if you do that, it doesn't always just win you the game, which is a little bit unfortunate. So to me, going to be a C tier option. Stolen AT Hauler. I think this is like a B tier. It's a card that I've seen get a lot more valuable as we play with Kazuda. But Kazuda is one of the few decks that can really utilize it. There are some other decks that have utilized Stolen AT Hauler to a good effect, but just being a 3 resource 4/5 space unit is strong. It's at the point of the game where just playing a big stat stick actually does work, right? When you're playing like 9 resource units, you need to have something that does something immediately, or even like 4, 5, 6 resources. But on turn 1 and 2, just playing a good stat stick is what you want to be doing in some decks, and Stolen AT Hauler is just that. There are some situations where even, you can manipulate it where it defeats or it gets defeated after your opponent's taken initiative. So you don't have the ability to play it, which is nice. So definitely some options there. Next up, we've got Radiant 7. This is like the quintessential budget replacement for Devastator. And for that reason, it's going to be a C tier option. It's a 7 resource 5/6, so a lot weaker in stats. It's got an interesting ability to shrink down some units with damage on it. It does indirect damage when it's played. To me, though, this is just not that great of a card. You're not going to really have your opponent divvy this damage up unless you're like already winning the game and they can't afford it to take the base damage. Your opponent's not going to be putting it on their units, and if they can't afford to take the base damage, there's oftentimes more options to be playing. But it is kind of like a budget replacement for Devastator. If you're going to Triple Dark Raid this out, then you can go and get some value out of it, I suppose, and maybe close out a game. Next up, we've got Boba Fett. This one to me is an A tier card. I think it's like high silencer level though. This is one of those cards where, to me, it's just a unit that you play on turn 2. It's an underworld card. It's got the bounty hunter tag. It's got a good stat line, reasonably good stat line, and it has a relevant on attack trigger. That's pretty much it. It's just a nice thing to play on curve. It's one of those cards where, similar to silencer, because it's so cheap, you don't really need a whole lot to make it something that I want to be playing in a lot of different decks. If you're playing Cunning Villainy, unless you're playing like a very big space strategy like Django, I think Boba Fett's going to be your guy. Next up, we've got Millennium Falcon. Guys, this is an S tier card. I think it's one of the best cards in the entire game. I'm trying to debate if it's literally just like the best card in the whole game. Like, is it the best card in the whole game? I don't know. It's best legendary, I should say, not best card. It's hard to say because you have like Triple Dark Raid running around, which makes a lot of these other cards a little bit better. But Millennium Falcon is just so strong. It is just so strong. And I think I'm actually just going to put it at the top of S tier, especially in a space meta, but especially with Kazuda. Like, the addition of Kazuda bumped this up even further because now we have a 3/4 and it just, you don't have to pay the cost. But also, just playing this early on in the game against a space deck and completely messing up their early game can just really put you in a great position. The addition of the new Han Solo and pilots can make this an even more oppressive threat. Even Han Solo makes it a first striker when you play Han on that unit, which can completely destroy an opponent's strategy. This is just an obnoxious card. And I mean, Millennium Falcon has won me so many more games than like any other card on this list as a surprise value. The ability to have it immediately readied up is incredible. And I think it's actually just one of, if not the best card, best legendary. Except we have Cunning. And I think Cunning is the best legendary. I legitimately think Cunning is the best legendary, guys. You have seen me time and time and time and time again do absolutely disgusting things with Cunning. Similar to Vigilance, Cunning is one of the other legendaries that I've seen be played for 6 resources to a good effect. But the thing that's even more obnoxious about this is that there are double Cunning lists out there. Like, if you think about what Vigilance is doing, they're like, oh, Vigilance is good enough to where I want to play it in my deck. Cunning is good enough to where you want to play double Cunning because of the card Cunning. Like, that's how good Cunning in of itself is. Like, you could just play any double Cunning deck and win because of the card Cunning. So I think that's something that's really going for Cunning. It is just insane. The ability to do everything that Cunning wants. Disrupt your opponent by exhausting or bouncing. Put on additional pressure with a +4/+0. And if they don't have things to disrupt on the ground, guess what? You can disrupt their hand. Cunning is absurd. And that leads us to Change of Heart, which I think is a card that I would put a little bit higher if Commandeer did not exist. But as of right now, I'm going to put it somewhere in the kind of low A tier portion. Change of Heart's definitely a very powerful card. And some decks still use Change of Heart, like Palpatine Yellow, for example. But Commandeer is just a little bit of a better option, I'd say, especially in the current meta, because Commandeer is going to have a lot of targets that you're really going to be using a Change of Heart on, but then also has that tempo advantage and also a resource discount. But Change of Heart being able to steal a unit and you're able to attack with it is pretty nice. And then lastly, we have Death Star plans. This is definitely, I mean, it's not a Cunning card, but it's only one, so I'm gonna stick it in with the Cunning cards. This is definitely one of those ones where it's really hard to evaluate, and I still haven't really figured out a spot for it. I'm going to put it in the C tier, kind of middle of the pack, because I think it could do something at some point in a niche circumstance. And I've seen it do some cool things in like Sabine, like the unit Sabine, so you can't attack that unit. Like, that's kind of cool. But I haven't seen it be broken yet, so I can't put it any higher. And I have tried to play with it. And there have been games where it's been pretty fun and done some good work, and then games where it literally lost me a game that I probably could have won if I just had a normal card. So even though it's quite powerful, I think just because of the volatility of the card, I'm gonna have to put it in C tier. So that's Cunning, guys, and well, we have the list all finished up. So that is the total of the list. I think there is definitely arguments to be made across the list. Okay. This is not a perfect list. This is just kind of on the fly, easy ratings for some of the things that are going on. And it's not even necessarily based purely on what the meta is right now. It's more of based on the viability of these cards either taking like the decks to the next level, or how powerful the cards in themselves are in the decks currently. Like legendaries in of themselves, if you were just to base it off of the meta, like you would be putting Devastator in like S tier, you'd be putting DJ in S tier, Cad Bane in S tier, right? Millennium Falcon Cunning in S tier, maybe Poe Dameron in S tier. But then you take like Aggression and Vigilance and Super Laser Blast, Luke's, Vader, and you'd probably be putting them in B tier because maybe not Super Laser Blast and Vigilance necessarily. Those will probably be an A tier, but like Luke's and Vader's just aren't viable in the meta right now. So I don't think that's necessarily a very fair way to evaluate some of these cards. Like Luke and Vader are obviously extremely powerful legendaries and really did make up an entire archetype on their own for the most part. Like these are the reasons as to why you're playing these decks. So even though like Django's kind of taken over the game at the current moment and it's tough to go ahead and play some of these decks, I don't think you should be dropping them just because of the current state of the meta. This is more of like an overall powerful slash viability tier list for legendaries if the meta was in a stable space, not necessarily reflecting of the meta at the current moment. Of course, things like Aggression just happened to get stronger, in my opinion, just because of the card pool that was introduced with set 4, which just kind of changes the nature of the game rather than the meta itself. So lots of things to think about. There are arguments that you can make across the board, and I'm sure a lot of you are going to go to the comment section saying, you know what, I think Planetary Bombardment should be triple S tier, or I think DJ is actually the best card in the game. Whatever you have to say, I'm very curious to hear it. But I do believe Cunning is by far the strongest card. Like the card is disgusting. How many times have you guys been defeated by a Cunning? I mean, it is insane. Like if you just think about this just for a second, okay? Just one more second before I close up the video. A little bit of ramble here, okay? If you think about Django for a second, there's no legendary on this list that makes you afraid of Django. Really. Like Devastator is good, okay? It's good in Django, and it is something that you have to think about. But it's not like, oh my gosh, I can't win because of Devastator from Django. It's Triple Dark Raid and IG 2000 and Django to himself and the overall makeup and the synergy of the deck. It's not a single card. But then you look at Cunning, and that single card just completely annihilates your experience in some games. Like, turns the game 180, like, on its head. It is just horrible. So, horrible for you if you're on the opposing side. Great if you're playing Cunning. That's part of the reason why I love double yellow Asajj, by the way. But that is the list, guys. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all for the next one.